Hello, everyone. I believe it's 12 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this Friday. Today is Friday, January 19th, 2024, and we're going to go ahead and get started with this week's edition of the Perisson Real Estate Pulse, which I'm just calling Perisson Pulse now. Thank you so much for joining us and for watching if you're not able to join us live on here. Just a quick intro. My name is Jean Joe, and I'm going to do this few more times, and then maybe I'll just stop because I'll assume that everybody knows me if you're watching this. I am the broker and owner of Perisson Real Estate, which is based in Millbrae, California. The name Perisson comes from the Greek word for abundance and overflow. And our company's vision is really is based on this principle of abundance, that we have more than enough, that there is abundance. And so we should lift each other up, and there can be win-win situations. So our company's vision is to serve our clients, our colleagues, and community so that everyone can thrive and experience abundance in their real estate lives. We've been doing, ever since we started in 2016, I've been doing seminars on a variety of real estate topics, both in person and via Zoom. And this year, 2024, one of the things that I wanted to start is just to force myself and commit myself to every Friday from noon to 12:30, just 30 minutes, talking about real estate. Once a month, we'll do a market update just to keep you up to date on what's going on in our local market. And then besides that, just cover a variety of topics that are related to real estate, things that are happening in the news, things that I'm seeing in different issues, and also just answering any questions that come from the people who are watching and our clients and communities. So really, I'm hoping once this gets better and better to be willing, that even other agents, real estate agents in the area and even across the country can be able to see as yet another resource. I know there are a lot of videos out there, YouTube sessions and other videos out there, but I'm hoping to be able to give a little bit more local take in terms of what's going on here in my area for real estate. Before I go into today's topic, which is a big one, I'm going to introduce another big topic here, which is the Repeal the Death Tax Initiative. This is an initiative sponsored by the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. It has to do with Proposition 19, which was passed a couple of years ago. There are two pieces to that proposition, one of which is for homeowners 55 and older, or with permanent disabilities, or in disaster zones, disaster areas, have the ability to be able to sell their existing home and purchase another one anywhere in California, and take their property taxes with them. That's called affordability, which is a good thing. There is a second piece to that, which a lot of people at the time did not really know about or understand fully, which is the inheritance portion. And what that does is allow you to, what that does is that in the past, what the law was that if you had a principal residence, you could pass that on to your children, and it would not be reassessed. And then if at the current values, the property taxes would stay the same. And then if it's an investment property, all other investment properties would be reassessed after a total value of $1 million. What happened with Proposition 19 is it changed that to where you would have to have a principal residence become the principal residence of an heir, and then you can only exclude $1 million of assessed value, of current market value. And then anything else would just, all other investment property would be completely reassessed. It's a big topic, and we've been Harvard Jarvis Taxpayer Association has been trying to undo that piece of Proposition 19. There was an effort last year that didn't go through, and then now they're collecting petitions again. So if you want more information on this, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that. There's a QR code you can see on the screen. That's to go to our YouTube seminar that we have that goes into more in-depth as to how all of this works and the impacts that can have. Some of the feedback that I've been hearing, well, one of the things is that when Prop 19 came through, it was actually sponsored by our California Association of Realtors. And just a note, all my comments here are not as an independent individual. I'm not trying to speak on behalf of any association or anything like that. But in any case, that was sponsored by California Association of Realtors, CAR, mainly because of that benefit of being able to have homeowners who are, getting older and they want to be able to have that flexibility to move closer to children or closer to better medical care. And the property tax change would have kept them in their homes. So that was a good thing. But in addition to that, having this inheritance piece was necessary. They felt that was necessary to be able to get it to pass because it would be more financially attractive in terms of taxpayers. But in any case, Howard Jarvis HJTA was trying to get that rolled back, and so you can go. We have a seminar on it that goes into more detail, the impact on it. Some comments that I heard from people is from agents. Sometimes I hear, well, I'm getting more sales because these heirs are being forced to sell their homes. That's great that it's good business, more business for people, and maybe it frees up more inventory. But unfortunately, there are cases where it's really negatively impacting either long-term tenants who've been in at reduced market rates, at reduced rental rates, or it's been disadvantaging those who've set up. I've heard of cases where you have a homeowner who they have a child with long-term disabilities, will not be able to work, and so that home being passed on to the child is what will be the income from that is what will be supporting that child through their lifetime. And now they're being forced to sell, and yes, that means that they do have the money coming in, but it's a difficulty. So a lot of different things going on. And again, I would encourage you to watch the YouTube channel. The deadline for those petitions, they need to get up to 875,000 valid signatures, so we're hoping to get over 1 million. They were hoping to get over 1 million signatures because some of them will be, maybe not properly filled out and whatnot. So the deadline was originally mid-January. They did reach the 25% mark, benchmark, which on one of the things for that is that it makes it so that the California legislature does need to consider, and they can now choose to put it on the ballot for this November. The legislature did have an opportunity to do that last year and chose not to. So HJTA is saying, they don't want to rely on that aspect of it, and instead really hoping to get the number of petitions needed. So that deadline has been, the other effect of being able to go to 25% is that deadline has been extended out to February 5th. So a couple more weeks. If you signed your petition last year, when they were trying it last year, that doesn't work anymore. So you have to go to repeal the death tax. I have it .com, but it might be repealthedeathtax.org. You have to go there and make sure to download the petition. It's in PDF. You can email it to your friends, share it with people, but it does need to be downloaded, signed in by hand, and mailed into HJTA. So just want to put that out there. If you're interested in it, please make sure that you do that. If you'd like to talk, I'm totally happy to meet up with people and talk as well. So just please let me know if that's something that you have interest in or questions about. And again, we're really hoping to be able to support this initiative because I've actually had clients who are being negatively impacted by this part of Prop 19, where one who inherited properties, long-term tenants who've been paying way below market rate rents. And he just got his property tax bill a couple weeks ago. And it's basically the rents are good to either not cover or barely break even the property taxes. And then that doesn't even include maintaining the place and whatnot. And so it's putting him as well as the tenants into a not ideal situation. So I think there's a lot of information on this website. Again, it could be repealthedeathtax.org. Go to the YouTube channel here and then also look it up, and you can go, if you can't find it, also Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association website. They have it on there as well. So just wanted to get that out there. So with that, I'm actually this is the end of my slides, and I'm gonna go into the topic that I'm covering for today, which is recent litigation. And this is something that you may or may not have heard about in the news, because it's been a lot in the news every so often. lately, and I think we're going to be hearing about it more and more as time goes by. This has to do with litigation against different things. So before I go into that, what I'll say is um, there are many other people who've gone to this in a lot more depth. I thought it would be good to just give a broad overview of what's going on, what the situation is. And just as I was preparing for this, I realized maybe I bit off a lot more than I can chew because I have literally pages and pages. I'm still old school. I like paper and highlighting pages of information about it. And it's a topic that's constantly in flux. So it's literally changing week to week. What do I mean? So I'll just launch into what do I mean by all of this. As a general background, last year there were a series of lawsuits that were filed in other parts of the country against the National Association of Realtors, NAR, against the local associations in some cases, and then major brokerages, and it all differs depending on the suit. But these major brokerages like Remax, Anywhere, which includes Coldwell Banker and Century 21, I believe, Keller Williams, Home Services of America, eXp Realty, Redfin, not Perisson because we're too little, but and these are in other parts of the country. But there were these lawsuits that were filed against the associations as well as even different MLSs. So we'll have like MLSs, meaning the multiple listing services out there. So the basic issue at stake was that these were talking about possible violation of antitrust laws, and there was a claim of collusion or conspiracy based on a few different things. One of the main things is the NAR's participation rule, which and they're claiming that would artificially inflate real estate commissions. What is that participation rule? Well, it's a rule that says all brokers need to make a blanket non-negotiable offer of a buyer broker compensation when listing a property on a multiple listing service. Okay, that's a lot to say. So just breaking that down, when a seller decides that they're going to sell a property, then what they would do is have a conversation with an agent that's going to represent them, and they sign a listing agreement to pay a certain amount of commission. From that commission, for here in California, the way it works is that they would also, within that listing agreement, authorize their agent to offer a compensation to the buyer's broker. So technically, the word is commission when you're talking about the listing agent is receiving a commission, and then they're offering a compensation to the buyer broker. Most people, and including me, don't actually separate that out. So you'll hear commission compensation kind of interchanged. And that's not a big issue. But what is at issue is that when you are listing a property in the MLS, NAR requirements are that you do need to put on there what you're offering. You have to offer compensation to the buyer's broker. And I'll go into that in a little more detail as to what that needs to be and whatnot. But the whole argument was that this practice was making it so that you are in essence forcing a homeowner to have to offer something to a buyer's agent, and that was where the objection comes in. Some of that has to do with homeowners, some owners claiming that they didn't even know that they were, whatever they were paying their agent, they didn't know that they were paying this other agent out there. And I'll go into that in more detail, how in California, it's a lot clearer. But some of these cases were happening, most of the cases originally were happening outside of California, and everybody does real estate differently in different states. The other piece of that was that not just that did they not know, but that there were some owners who were saying, well, my agent forced me to pay a certain amount to the buyer's agent, and so by doing all of that, you're kind of ending up colluding or conspiring to make it so that, you're keeping that commission or that compensation at a certain amount, certain price. And so you're price fixing, and that would violate antitrust rules. I meant to say, before I get into all of this, as a disclaimer, I am not an attorney. And again, I'm digesting all of this as we go along. So this is just to give you a broad overview. If you want the real details, you can ask me and I'll send you to different articles, or you can find them online. But in any case, that happened. One of the cases that I will talk about, it's called the Sitzer-Burnett case that actually got settled last October, or that was concluded last October. In that trial, they actually gave, as part of the argument against NAR and brokerages, et cetera, one of the things that they showed was they gave examples of training sessions where an agent would, in essence, bully a seller into offering a certain amount to the buyer's agent and saying, nobody's going to show your house. You have to offer X and X amount, and there was a specific amount, and stated, or else it's not going to work. And some people, some training videos where they would say, don't take the listing, don't agree to help a seller if they're not willing to offer X and X amount, right? And so that's where the issues came up. So last October, as I mentioned, the first of these cases, it's called the Sitzer-Burnett case. It's based in Missouri. That came down against NAR and the other defendants, and the judgment amount was for $1.8 billion, a huge amount. NAR is definitely planning to appeal this, and the process could take years to resolve. When I talked to my colleagues, I know there were some people who were like, well, and I would see this even on if you read articles and then there are comments from other agents, a lot of the comments were, well, it's not going to happen for another few years because it's not settled. So we're not going to worry about that. Unfortunately, one of the effects of that is that even though that specific case is being appealed and NAR does think that they have a good case, and I'll go into that. In the meantime, we are seeing copycat lawsuits being filed already all over the country. And in fact, the attorney in that specific case, the Sitzer-Burnett case, actually turned around and filed another lawsuit the very next day after the conclusion of that trial. So, feeling very empowered. I think we're going to see a lot of that. And when this first came out, the judgment came out in October, I would talk to different other colleagues, and, what I would hear from some people is, well, California is different because we have, just a lot more forms. And that is true. I've seen other states and talked to other agents, and our real estate purchase contract is 16 pages long, which is double what it was when I started real estate in 2008. Our listing agreement is 5 pages long, which I want to say it was 2 or 3 pages when I started. So our forms in California are constantly getting updated and upgraded. We're a very litigious state. And so every time we have a series of lawsuits, then things get updated. And so our disclosure package is much bigger than I've seen in other areas and in other states for sure. And there are other states where they don't even do, like in our area, it's very common where we'll provide all the disclosures, inspection reports up front. They don't do that in other parts of the country. And there are some states where they require an attorney to be involved in every real estate transaction. So every state is different. Our contracts, yes, they are much longer, but that doesn't mean that people aren't going to possibly sue. And sure enough, we did see in mid-December, there was actually a lawsuit, the first one in California, that was filed again in mid-December in San Francisco. And it's on behalf of homeowners in Marin County. And then just with the same kind of rationale, and then with the same claims. And then just last week, another one was filed that's including CAR, which is our California Association of Realtors, as one of the plaintiffs. And so, for those people who thought, well, California, we're different, we are not so different. And if anything, if people can find a reason to sue, I think it'll happen. So some thoughts on this. And again, there are oodles and oodles of articles. I am not an attorney. I can't speak to all the different merits of it, but I do think it's important because people who think it's not going to impact us and how we work here in California and even in the Bay Area more specifically, I think that's being very idealistic and naive because it is going to impact us. A few thoughts, as I said, California contracts are very clear. In our listing agreement, it does say specifically in there, commissions, fees are negotiable. So that's first thing. There's a blank line, and you know, I tell people don't go to a listing agreement with it filled in, the number filled in. It's all negotiable. Okay, so, and it's very clear in there. It also is very clear in that if you see a listing agreement, it will actually have this is how much the compensation is for the broker, for the listing broker, and then further down you'll see this is how much is being offered to the buyer's broker. And so you have to have that conversation. It's not in addition. So you'll have, you know, whatever X amount for the listing broker, and then further down, it's out of that X amount, this is how much is being shared or offered to the buyer's broker. So just to make that clear. The claim that there's a collusion, and this is NAR's argument, has been and is to be able to say, you know, trying to say that there's a collusion when you're talking about all the different states, when you're talking about all the different states out there, all of the different associations, the different types of brokerages, all the millions of agents that are out there, and saying that we're colluding when there's such, you know, when there are different models of real estate, that's difficult to prove. You know, that's a hard sell to say that that's what's going on. If anything, we're all competing against each other. And so, you know, it's supposed to be a competitive open market, right? And again, you know, commissions are negotiable, and it does say that very clearly on our contracts. And if it doesn't on other state contracts, I'm sure they'll change that. MLSs, just going to the multiple listing service, as I mentioned, that participation rule for NAR does say that you need to offer a compensation. It doesn't say what number that compensation needs to be. And so where that compensation gets published is in our multiple listing service. I'm actually on the finance committee. I'm the finance chair for the multiple listing service in our area, MLS listings. And just to be clear, that number could be 0. So even though you need to say that you have to offer, you know, that there has to be an offer, that offer could be 0. Up until this past year, that offer, because we couldn't put 0 as a number, and that could be a long debate, is 0 a number? But in any case, we had it where agents could put in as little as 1 cent. I have never seen a 1 cent listing, but that's a possibility that you could do 1 cent. I think I've seen $1 at once, but that always has been possible. With everything that happened, we decided to go ahead and change it to be 0, because 1 cent and 0 is not a big deal. But, you know, and so to be able to do that, so that is a possibility, to offer nothing, to offer $0 as a compensation to the buyer's broker. Most people don't do this as a matter of practice, as I said, but it is an option that's there, and it may make sense in some cases. As it works itself through, though, I think and so again, in terms of the MLS, it's not going to make much of a difference, because that was already there, to be able to do the 0 commission, or you know, previously a 1 cent commission. But as it works itself through, we may start to see more sellers brokers offering an even lower or no compensation to buyer brokers, in which case different things might happen. One, you might end up in a situation where buyers might not actually have their own or seek their own representation. In fact, I think I read in one of the articles I read, one of the claims or arguments was, well, buyer brokers should only be for the wealthy buyers who can afford to have someone represent them. I think that in itself just is not great, because, you know, I think everyone, if you're a buyer, should have representation. And on my own listings, I have it as a rule that I don't actually represent the buyers, because I think it's important to have the buyer feel like they have someone who's looking out for their best interests. And it's really hard to do that. I do have a handful of cases where I have represented both sides, and it's generally because it's a situation where they already knew each other, they already know what they're going to buy, and I'm just helping to facilitate the transaction. But in California, you are allowed to represent both buyer and seller. I just choose not to do so, because I think it's important to have your own representation as much as possible. And to say that only the wealthy buyers who can afford their own broker deserve having their own broker. I don't agree with that. I think it's important that we have buyers who have representation. Going from there, assuming that they're going to get representation, buyer's agents will then need to negotiate with their buyers for compensation. So in a case where you do want your representation, now we need to come up with an agreement. And there have been agreements. There is an agreement available to do that. But the issue with this is that, okay, if a seller says, well, I'm not going to offer anything, that's fine. The buyer wants their representation, then they're going to get an agent, and that agent will need to have an agreement with their own buyer to be able to, I'm sorry, with their own agent. The buyer and the agent will have to have an agreement as to what that compensation will be. What that will do is now the buyer, in addition to trying to pay for a home, which is already challenging, especially in our area in terms of home prices, now the buyer needs to come up with that additional funding to be able to pay their agent. Okay. On top of that, if there is financing involved, if there's a loan involved, that could further throw things off, because if the funds that you needed for reserves, or the funds that you needed, if you're barely making it in terms of your debt to income ratios to be able to have that financing to get a loan, now that's going to go, now that extra amount that you need to pay your agent could throw things off. Right. And so what's the kind of further consequence of that is that now some buyers may need to think twice before they put in an offer. So just to make a note, all of that, the broker compensation that's being offered, it is actually public information. It is required to be public. So it goes into MLS. From MLS, that feeds out to all of the different real estate sites that you see. And that does have to be shown. How much are they offering a buyer's broker? So a buyer, if they're looking around and going, well, there's this house where they're offering that compensation, they're going to pay for my buyer's broker to be, their fee. And then there's this other house that doesn't have it. There may be an impact where a buyer may need to think twice and go, maybe I'll go with the one where, it's going to cost me a little bit less because the seller is also already taking care of that compensation or not. Or if they really like a house, maybe they'll have to think, okay, well, I wanted to offer this much, but now I'm going to have to offer this much, a little bit less, because there's no way, that's the only way I can afford to pay my agent. So I hope that's kind of clear. That's basically the main thing of what's going on. What does this mean for you, for a consumer? Well, if you're selling, pay attention to what you're signing. I mean, that's just true for anything that you do, but obviously there's a lot of paperwork that gets involved and people will sometimes forget. The whole thing about commission and compensation, like I said, sometimes you'll hear those terms interchangeable, but they are negotiable. And they're on that first page of a listing agreement. So it's very, very clear for my client. They are negotiable, but I do hope that, I always hope that for my clients and for all of us professionals that you can see the value and expertise. We're not there just to put a sign in the front of your property. We're there to give you valuable information, advice on a host of things, preparing your house for market, listing the market, what's going on, how to deal with offers, how to qualify offers, how to take that offer from start to finish, to be able to close successfully. I hope that there is a value that you see in that. And also that there should be, considering as a seller to offer a fair compensation also to the buyer's broker, partly for the sake of, yes, helping to motivate them if they have choices. Maybe it'll motivate them more if they have a fair compensation as opposed to not. But it could also, as we move forward, impact what a buyer is willing to offer, or if they're even able to offer on their home. As a practice, just to put it out there, personally, if as a buyer's agent, I have never shown or not shown a property based on how much I'm going to be getting in the compensation. Especially because over more than 10 years, we've been experiencing record low inventory. Right. And so there aren't that many to choose from to begin with. And so if I can help my clients find a home that they like and that they want to pay for, that's what I'm going to show them, right? Regardless of what the compensation is. And that is how I and most of the colleagues that I know function. So we're not just going, well, let's not show that one because they're offering a little bit less. That's not happening. As far as the people that I know. So, and definitely not something that I do and none of our agents at Perisson will do. If you're a buyer, moving forward, and I have not, I've been in real estate 16 years. I've just started using the buyer broker agreement form. I'm doing that because all of this is happening. And so don't be surprised if you are a buyer, if you start getting, as you talk with agents, that they'll be having these discussions with you to sign a buyer broker form. We do, as agents, work very hard. This is our livelihood. We work very hard for our buyer clients. We spend a lot of time understanding the market and the different issues involved and trying to help make sure everything goes smoothly. And we just want to make sure that we're fairly compensated. So I'm, probably going to be moving forward with that, and then and asking buyers more. And I'm sure you'll see that more as a buyer. And if the seller is offering, and you'll be able to see what the seller is offering. So if the seller is offering that compensation that you agreed to, then you're fine. You don't need to pay anything above that. We're not asking for anything extra. We're just saying we want to make sure that we ensure that we do get some kind of that we do get a fair compensation. And again, just to note that before you write an offer, or even as you're looking at homes, and maybe if you haven't noticed it, whenever you're looking up listings, it should be on there that it'll show what is being offered to the buyer broker. So I'm actually right at 12:31. So I'm going to wrap up with that. And I hope that was clear. If not, sorry. I tried to boil down something that is a lot of information, and there are articles out there. And if you'd like to discuss, I'm happy to talk with you further on that. Thank you so much for those of you who joined us live, and we will be making this video available on, continue to have it available on our YouTube channel. And if you have any topics that you'd like to cover next week, I'm planning to talk about insurance, because this wasn't a hard enough topic. So I'm going to talk about insurance because that's a big issue. And then we'll be having other topics. HOA is a big one, mortgage rates for sure. And I am hoping that as we continue to do this and I get in the habit of doing this, I'm definitely planning to invite on guest speakers. So it's not just me, but you'll hear from lenders, from insurance folks, from a variety of other more experts on the topics. And definitely I'll be keeping track of what's going on with the litigation, and probably do a follow-up later this year on the same topic. So I'll call it close for now. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you have a wonderful weekend. If you do have anybody that you know of, or if you yourself are thinking about buying or selling in the near future, would appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss that with you, or send your referrals our way. Thank you.